Hello and welcome to TinySprite Scripts. Today I'm going to be starting a few episodes based on how to set up your FiveM server. The reason why this is going to take a couple episodes, even though it could take 10 to 15 minutes to set up your FiveM server, is because I want to run through some things that every server should do to protect their files and to protect their assets and their players. First thing I'm going to cover is what kind of server should you get? So you can get two types of servers. You can get one that is with a host and it has a UI and a whole system that you have to put your files through using FTP and all that kind of stuff. The second one is by renting a VPS and then you just install your server onto the VPS. The one I would highly recommend is getting the VPS. Why? Because this allows you way more control and access over your files, your scripts, and your database compared to the other version, which restricts you and you don't have a full control and you're restricted by that server provider or that host provider's UI system. So I would always go with a VPS to give yourself way more control over your server and allow you to be able to do what you need to do when you need to do it and not be restricted by a FTP system that could corrupt your files or slow down your download speeds. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to download a program that is going to allow us to run our servers and run databases with our servers. Most people would recommend that you download XAMPP onto your server. I am not recommending that at all. XAMPP is outdated, it's old, and also every time that you start up your system, whether it's locally or whether it's through a VPS and the VPS has to restart because of an update, you have to make sure that you turn on XAMPP and you turn on the SQL features inside of XAMPP. And that is just something that you don't want to have to think about every time you start up your system. So here comes MariaDB. And a small warning slash disclaimer here. MariaDB and XAMPP will not work together. You have to have one or the other. So I would recommend MariaDB, uninstall XAMPP, get rid of it. It's not needed. It's old school. It's a thing in the past. MariaDB makes life a lot easier. You install it, then you forget about it. You don't need to think about it ever again. There's nothing you need to turn on or off because it does it all automatically for you. The one thing that you need to be careful though when you're installing MariaDB is in the installer at one point it will ask you about a password. There is a checkbox there to uncheck it to say no password. We do not need a password. Make sure you do that. You do not want to add a password. The reason for this is if you add a password, then every time you need to access your database, you're going to need that password and you're going to have to potentially share that password with your developers, which obviously password sharing is not a good or safe practice to do. Not only that, you're going to have to put that password into your FiveM server so your FiveM server could also access the database. So this is why I recommend do not add a password. You don't need it. It is not needed at all. I'm not going to be clicking download on this right now because I already have it downloaded on my system, but go through the download, get it downloaded onto your system. Next is HideSQL. HideSQL is to add a database and an easy usable database that you can access and see all your tables in your database for your server. So you can see what your players' accounts, you can see your players' inventory, all that kind of stuff through the database. So if you have any issues, you can access it, or if you need to import any SQL files from creators and scripts that you purchased. You do that all through Heidi SQL. This is a clean, easy, intuitive program that I've ever used and a lot of people and a lot of servers use. So this is highly recommended to get Heidi SQL. The third and last program that you need to download is GitHub Desktop. Now, this is how we're going to protect our files. This is how we're going to look after them. We're going to use them for version control, and we can also use them with our developers. So we can have our developers be able to test things, add new scripts, and all contribute to your server without them all having to be on the same machine. So I've already downloaded this, but download desktop GitHub, and then we'll go from there. So now you downloaded desktop GitHub, what you're going to need to do is you're going to need to create a GitHub account, of course, so you can use that. And all your developers will need to create an account as well if they don't already. Once you've created an account, in the top right side of GitHub up here, you'll have a little image. It should be your profile image or the default one that it provides you. Once, if you go up to that little image and click it, you should see settings. On the left hand side under the access section, you should see a button called organizations. Click on organizations, and then on that screen, you should see a button that says new organization. Now, don't worry, when you click this, you will see some options for paid organizations. You don't need to pay for it. On the left hand side is a free one. Click free, click onto that, and just go through the process of setting up an organization. In that, you can set a name. So, set the name to your server, whatever it be. Me, for example, could be TinySprite Scripts. So just name it whatever you want the organization to be named. You can then also add members to it at one point. Just beware that on that section, that is adding members to the entire organization, which you might not want to do just yet. What you might want to do is just add people in that section that is yourself, the owner, and potentially a co-owner. Do not add your developers to that organization because we're going to add them a little bit later in a different section. So once you've created your organization, you will, when you go here to the picture in the top right, you should now see organizations here, and then you'll see your organization in the list. Click that, and then it will bring you here. This is your organization. And then you go to repositories up here. Now, I don't have any repositories in here yet. So that's what we're going to do. We're going to create a repository. To do that, we're going to click on the GitHub desktop app here. We're going to go file, and we're going to go new repository. We're going to put in the name of the repository. So let's say, for example, I'm going to put TinySprite, but I'm going to put our initials, and I'm going to put development server. You don't have to name it this. You can just name it, whatever your server is called. So server name here -dev, or server name here -production. I wouldn't separate the dev and the production. I would just keep it all in one. So theoretically, honestly, I would just probably go TinySprite, and I'm going to put TinySprite server like this, or actually TinySprite RP. That's probably going to be the more common that people do. So I'm going to put TinySprite RP as the repo name. Then you're going to make sure you want to do your file path. So I have a very specific drive, which is called my dev drive, and I have a FiveM folder on there. If you're doing this on a VPS, I would highly recommend that you probably just put the folder on your desktop. But if you're doing it on your local machine, you can put it on your desktop as well, or if you've got a specific drive for it, then go for it. Then click Create Repository. up here it says publish repository. So we're going to click publish repository. We've got the name here. Keep this checked. Do not uncheck it. We want to keep the code private, because if you don't keep it private, then anyone on GitHub will be able to see your server code, which you do not want to do, because it's going to have loads of um, encrypted code and code that just can't be exposed, that is from other creators. In the organization here, I've got a lot here, so please excuse mine, but you're just gonna pick your organization name. So mine's just test roleplay server, and then publish repository. This will only take a second to publish because there's nothing there to actually push right now. So now we have that TinySprite RP, you can see up at the top here. And then what we're going to do is we're going to go back to the browser, refresh this. And when we refresh, we'll see the repository is here. And if we click into that repository, we can now go up to settings. And if you click collaborators and teams, this is now where you can add your developers. So you can click onto that and then you just add your developers to the repo. So you see, you're not adding them to the organization, you're adding them to this one specific repo. That way, if you want to add other repos in the future for other things that you're doing, other projects that you're doing, you don't have all the same developers that are in this on those unless you want them to, and then you add them per repo. This makes it a lot easier and a lot more to control. I believe with GitHub you can add up to, I think it's like 5 people per repo until you have to then start paying for it. So 5 is actually a pretty good number. So now you've done this, one thing you can do, and this is highly recommended, is you have this thing on on GitHub called branches. So what I would do is click view all branches, and first of all, we're going to rename the main branch here. And what I'm going to name this is, I'm just going to name it the development branch. Rename the branch. And then what I'm also going to do is I'm going to make this off the main branch here, which will be then the development branch. And I'm going to put production. Or you could put live. Oh, hold on. I need to refresh this because it needs to rename that. There we go. So most people would use the word live. I'm using the word production because that's technically what it actually is. It's the production branch. So then what you could also do is create some new ones, and you're going to call this, dev A, for example. You can name this however you want. So you can name it. So like for me, it'd be potentially you could put, McLean branch, or you could just put dev McLean. Completely up to you. I'm just going to throw in a couple here, and you're always going to have it come off this default branch here, the development branch. So as you can see them now there. Now what this does is if you go back into your repo, first of all, it's going to tell you this because you've changed it from main to development. And the reason for this is by default, it's main. So if you do this early on right now, like how we're doing it here, it's not a big deal. But if you decide to change the name of this branch, the main branch, later down the line, anyone who's using the main branch, it might mess up their files or their GitHub thing here. As you can see that mine still says main right here. And what they would need to do is run these in their code editor, and then that way it will change from main to development for them a lot easier. But we don't have to worry about this right now. So in here now we can see all of our branches. Now, why is this good? So this is a development branch, right? This is going to be the most updated development branch. Me as dev A, I'm going to come to this branch, and this is going to be the branch I work on. So every time I make a change to a piece of code, I would push it to GitHub to the dev A branch. And the reason for this is if I mess up, if I break something, it doesn't break this development branch, which means that is still all good for by your testers to test that branch and go, oh yeah, everything's working, or no, there's an error or a bug here. So you're using dev A, and then your dev B over there is using dev B. And this also allows that if you happen to make a change in a similar file together, you don't necessarily get that crossover on the same branch. Or if I'm testing something that is that doesn't need to go to the other developers, then it keeps it out of their way. And then what you do once you've made your change, you got this contribution button here. Once you've made a change, it will say in here commit change or whatever it is. You would click that, and once you click that, it will say push your changes from dev A to development, and then you can push those changes as a pull request to the development branch. There's a lot on how you can configure this and sort this out on YouTube, so I would advise looking it up and seeing what you can do. I did also forget another program that you should download, and that program is Visual Studio Code. Make sure you get the blue one and not the purple one. There is a big difference. I'm not sure exactly what it is, but you want the blue Visual Studio Code. And the reason why I recommend Visual Studio Code is because, again, it's more updated. It's got loads of different like plugins that can point out mistakes and errors, and it works with a ton of different languages as well. It's really, really handy. It's really useful. Get Visual Studio Code. And GitHub also works with Visual Studio Code. So you can see over here, open a Visual Studio Code. So if you click fetch origin at the top here, this should, you see it says public branch. You can click publish branch, and this, when you come in here, you can see it's now updated. You got your development up here, and this is what you would do. So like on origin dev A, I can click that preview, whatever, and this would then allow dev A to work on dev A branch, and they would open up Visual Studio Code using dev A branch. Now, the one reason which is really good to use GitHub is, first of all, you can see all your changes here when you make changes. So if you make a mistake and you can't remember where you made that mistake, you look in here and it will tell you exactly on the left-hand side here what that change was. Also in history here, you can see here, look, initial commit. It will put your whole history here, and this is really, really good, especially for a server owner, because if, say for example, you got your lower end issues and you got your high end issues. Say your lower end issue, a developer makes a tiny mistake, maybe they leave debug on or something like that, you can come in here and potentially you can revert that change if that change is making massive issues in your server. Then you've got the big end scale. If you get a disgruntled developer who decides to delete all your files, and you're like, oh no, the whole server's gone, right? They would have to push that change to GitHub. And then you can come in and just, again, revert that change, and you have all your files back. You don't lose your files, because here in GitHub, you have this, you have, it's called version control, and you see in commits here, as you click on commits, you see every single commit that has been committed to GitHub. And even if they didn't commit it to GitHub, you still got all your files saved here on GitHub, so you can just load them back in, and you've got your server working perfectly fine again. So this is a layer of protection for your server, and it's highly, highly recommended. You should always use it. And you'll save yourself a world of issues. So we're coming up to the end of the episode here now. So this is episode 1. I'm going to thank you guys for watching. I hope this has helped on just getting your server started. And I know this is before starting the actual server itself. That's going to be the next episode. We're going to go into installing a server, and then we're also going to be talking on after that how to debug your server, how to figure out errors and issues, and downloading assets and things like that. So yeah, please do tune into this this little series that I'm doing on how to run a FiveM server. Thank you guys for watching. Please leave some comments down below, like, rating, and subscribe if you think this is helpful and this could help more. Thank you guys so much. Peace.